My name is Mike Lawson, and until 5 years ago, I was an agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For nearly 2 decades, I wore the badge, navigated the invisible labyrinth of secrets, and chased shadows. I lived at the intersection of authority and secrecy, where trust is fragile and every case can change your life. I joined the FBI straight out of college, driven by idealism, a vision of justice, of making the nation safer. I had no illusions. I knew the Bureau could be ruthless. But I believed in its mission. Over the years, I worked violent crime investigations, domestic counterterrorism, cyber intrusions, human trafficking rings. I was good at it, but none of those cases prepared me for what would eventually break me and ultimately make me walk away. This is my story. Chapter 1. Assignment Sierra North. It began in late winter, early 2015. I was pulled from the Organized Crime Division in New York and reassigned to a small special task force, Operation Sierra North. Cryptic name, no overt justification. We were told it was priority 1 and that we needed to remain tight-lipped, even within the Bureau. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. Our team, 4 agents total, was tasked with monitoring a quiet man named Alexander Alec Resner, mid-40s, dual citizen of the U.S. and Russia, and owner of a modest security consulting firm in Washington, D.C. On paper, Resner was just another ex-intelligence officer turned businessman. But cryptic financial transactions, encrypted communications, and foreign contacts had triggered a quiet file labeled Sierra North. 2 weeks into surveillance, our team discovered that Resner maintained a server farm in a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Arlington. We suspected it was hosting encrypted data for Russian intelligence or oligarchs. Worse, maybe something else. Chapter 2. Within the wiretap, we obtained a FISA warrant. Overnight, the warehouse was rigged with audio bugs. Network traffic was mirrored. We secured our own covert access. My FBI world became monitors and logs and code messages. I slept poorly, clutching a .40 Glock in a desk drawer, waking in sweats. That first night of data capture, I recall the hush of the warehouse, the soft hum of servers. Through our audio feed, we heard voices, some in Russian, some in English, esoteric, disjointed. My partner, Agent Marisol Ortiz, transcribed half-sentences. Protocol Omega. Confirm entry point via Sector Delta. Need the authorization codes by 0400 tomorrow. There was intelligence, threat, and something darker. A chill crept into me. We had activated the machine. We were pulling the threads, but to what? We uncovered something called Project Prometheus, scattered references, a prototype tool for mass manipulation, hacking industrial controls, swaying elections, even surgical strikes on infrastructure, undetectable, untraceable. Chapter 3, The Warehouse Raid. Our intel grew urgent. On a frigid morning in March, DEA SWAT and FBI HRT descended on the warehouse. Agents stormed in. We went dark. What we found was more determined than machines. Filing cabinets of data, hard drives, encrypted thumb drives, yellow binder labeled Prometheus Technical Specs. We seized everything. Resner was arrested. But he didn't talk. He invoked rights. He repeated that he'd sold legal cyber defense services, that we were misinterpreting, but our warrant was vast. The raid made headlines just barely. The minor spotlight, Resner's arrest on suspicion of unauthorized export of encryption module. His firm closed temporarily. The national press suspected bigger, but the Bureau stayed silent. Over months, I led the core team decrypting the data, chasing leads. Chapter 4. Behind the Wire. Late one night, Marisol and I accessed a decrypted document, a list of potential deployment targets. It included water treatment plants, power substations, electoral boards. Each entry had code names: Phoenix, Poseidon, Athena, Greek gods of destruction and strategy. We realized Project Prometheus wasn't defensive, it was offensive, a digital sword. But who was behind it? Resner's firm served as front. We traced payments to shell companies registered in Cyprus, Seychelles, and Icy, Moscow. There were connections to a Russian contractor with ties to the Kremlin's SVR intelligence service. Now we were in geopolitical territory. The moment we uncovered that, everything escalated. Chapter 5. The Interagency Rift. Inside, the Bureau's attitude shifted. Overt vigilance gave way to whispers. Where's the Department of Defense? What's DHS doing? This is geopolitical, not domestic. We were told to hand off the case to the National Security Division, NSD, and share with CIA behind the scenes. The Bureau's culture wasn't made for these walls. Every referral diluted our jurisdiction. We became bureaucratic traffic controllers. Congress demanded status updates. Congressional interest increased quietly behind closed doors. But Marisol and I clung to the thread. This tool, if unleashed, could justify war. We weren't going to let it slip. Chapter 6, Eyes in Moscow. In fall 2015, the CIA operation team got signals intelligence. Some Prometheus components were being tested in Moscow. We assigned a liaison, Agent Yuri Popov, an ex-Russian linguist, to join the CIA-run surveillance operation. Through Popov's help, agents tracked encrypted data moving between Rezno's group and an address in the Kitaygorod district. CIA's mode, spy world. We were spectators allowed to feed intel, but no matter how Snowden-esque it felt, this was bigger. The first peacetime cyber weapons of mass disruption. Chapter 7, Family at Risk. The pressure broke me. At home, my wife, Claire, and 2 kids, aged 10 and 7, sensed the change. I returned from missions, tense and distant. She asked what was going on. I lied. Just a big case, don't worry. But I panicked. Someone would come after me. My dream of justice was becoming toxic. One evening, I found an unmarked envelope in my mail. No return address, just Xerox pages, my work schedules, my kids' school photos, my license plate. I showed Claire that night. We slept in the basement. Our house alarm was reprogrammed. I filed internal threat reports, but it cut deep. This wasn't just about intel anymore. It was about my family's safety. Chapter 8, Fatal Compromise. It was March 2016. A federal court approved a covert Title III intercept on Rezno's attorney-client conversations, rare and extreme. That's when we heard the bombshell. Rezno confessed to a close associate that he had handed over a fully assembled working prototype of Prometheus to a team overseas, not components, an entire functioning system. We were too late. Our intelligence sources warned us. One night in late March, across multiple continents, a coordinated digital strike knocked out power in suburban Chicago, overloaded water systems in Dallas, froze election tallies in a county in Michigan. Not catastrophic, but enough to test, enough to threaten. Politicians call it coincidence. News outlets covered blackouts, data glitches. But inside the FBI, a code word, Cicero incident. Chapter 9, The Moral Brink. Now we were chasing ghosts. The Department of Justice, with NSD leadership, decided not to go public. We couldn't accuse a foreign government, no smoking gun, so they called it malfunctioning systems. No indictment. Agents were furious. I was furious, but bound by duty. A whistleblower leak might save lives, but cost national security. The choice cut into me. Justice versus secrecy, duty versus ethics. Chapter 10, Revelation. After weeks of hell, Marisol got a break. Reverse analysis of recovered logs traced a digital signature to an IP used by a NATO-affiliated contractor in Brussels. But we found it tunneled through servers in St. Petersburg. It meant providers had exploited NATO networks to mask the origin. That's a classic false flag. It also meant a multinational diplomatic crisis. Ignored. NATO would never admit it. The Bureau would never say. The White House, Stonewall. The data confirmed Russia's SVR used Prometheus to project digital power. Via front firms like Rezno's, we had proof. Chapter 11, The Final Push. I drafted a classified internal memo. Evidence, geopolitics, systemic risk. I circulated it to FBI Director NSD, Homeland Security. I asked, what are we going to do about it? Crickets. So Marisol and I decided to escalate quietly. We passed the memo to a Democratic member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, emphasizing potential threat escalation. She read it. She acted. Hearings were scheduled. Over public and closed sessions, Cyber Command's general testified. The NSD director testified, obfuscated. The DNI testified. It made headlines inside the Beltway. Quiet but real. The public would never know, but we had raised alarms. Chapter 12, A Choice. Once the referrals began, I sensed the decision point, stay or leave. The Bureau offered prestige and blame. I had built a vision, but the smell of institutional cover-up made me sick. I wanted institutions that acted on truth, not smothered it. In July 2016, I retired. I stayed in D.C. for 2 months, filing exit gifts, clearing house. Marisol stayed, just as she deserved. Chapter 13. Aftermath. Outside the Bureau, I lived in half shadows. I shared the classified details with a trusted journalist. The story hit but watered down. Digital blackouts raised concern about foreign hacking vulnerabilities. Prometheus never named. I didn't mind. The Bureau restructured its cyber intel unit. DHS passed measures to monitor critical infrastructure. Cyber Command hardened defenses. It wasn't the complete victory I'd imagined, but it was a start. I watch fewer water and energy blackouts now, even if never publicly confirmed. Epilogue Reckoning. I still keep a copy of that internal memo locked behind a password. On nights I worry about where the world's going, I reread it. It reminds me why I joined, why I stayed, and why I left. Prometheus is still out there. It's been sold in other forms. Governments will build systems like it. Cyberweapons are the next frontier, and they're quieter, cleaner, less accountable than bombs. My story isn't over. I consult for NGOs, share lessons on digital resilience. When someone asks, can this happen again? I say, yes. It's up to us to demand accountability, transparency, and vigilance. I lived inside the Bureau's belly. I saw technology become power and protect people, but also to command destruction. My hope now lies outside, in journalism, advocacy, public awareness. My mission remained just outside the oath. And